be screened for SUD services and then receive a referral. So within the beneficiary access line, what we call the BAL, the staff there will conduct a brief screening to determine the provisional level of care. So essentially, does a person need outpatient? Do they need residential services? What do we think that individual needs? And then I'll also talk with the patient about any specific needs and preferences they may have. They'll contact the substance use disorder provider to set an appointment, and then also send out reminders to the patient in order to help them connect with services. Sometimes this could be a challenge when we have individuals who have not yet connected to services. We know that it's a very difficult time. People may be kind of in the stages of change. They may be somewhat ready, not really ready, forced to be ready by the criminal justice system, things like that. And so we really want to help engage patients to really not only make that initial screening appointment, but to actually make it to the treatment provider for assessment and services. So I'll go through each of these pieces in a moment. So like I mentioned, it's a 24/7, 365 BAL. I should note at this point, right now we have a network of what we call community assessment service centers. That role is going to be transitioning, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the service navigator component. With the beneficiary access line, we're looking at doing this work with one of the two health plans in Los Angeles County, LA Care. They have a robust call center for their system right now. We really want to leverage that to be able to have a efficient and effective way of connecting our patients. That's one important change within our system of care once we launch the waiver. Services will be available in English and Spanish, of course, and we'll also have translation services in Los Angeles County. We have 12 threshold languages, so we need to make sure that we can provide, if not, direct services, at least translation services to all of the populations that we serve in Los Angeles County. We talked about the screening and the appointment, but and then I wanted to just kind of mention the bed and slot availability system that I referenced earlier. This would be a new component of our system. Right now, we don't have a centralized place where we know how many residential beds we have, how many withdrawal management beds we have, or how many outpatient slots, etc. do we have in our system of care. This will be important for the beneficiary access line to make those efficient referrals. So that's a system that we're building right now to make sure that individuals get quickly referred. It will also be a publicly available system, so we want, if agencies or individuals need to make a referral for a patient, we want to make that an option as well, so we know where to go. Hopefully it will be as real time as possible, but I think a lot of it's going to be through communication with our provider network. And then talk a little bit about the conducting of the reminder calls for assessment appointments. That will be key. LA Care has some systems in place that we should be able to leverage to make sure that that's possible. And then providing follow-up to ensure that the individual connects with the private provider is going to be an essential component of the beneficiary access line. So to speak a little bit more about how do we know which of our providers provide specific services for specific populations. So we know that the Community Assessment Service Centers, the CAS, have done a lot of work in this area. I think it'll be important for us to collaborate on this as we move forward and to really take a look at not only which of our providers may provide services for specific populations, but where do we need to build services for that? And what do we really need to consider when we're doing the screening process to make sure that individuals connect to those culturally appropriate services like Wes mentioned earlier this morning. So we'll be developing criteria around that. I think in reality, in the first year, will probably be how do our providers see, their role in this and be much more self-reported. As we move forward, we may need to consider how do we evaluate those kinds of components. And of course, linguistic services. And another piece, developmental expertise as well. A couple of the presenters yesterday talked about that with the adult population. So definitely something for us to consider there, as well as how do we expand services for our youth population. Right now, that service is relatively limited in Los Angeles County, and the waiver provides real opportunity to expand services for that population as well. So we expect to see a lot of growth in youth-specific services as well. One of the components for specifically the beneficiary access line will be how successful is this particular service in identifying treatment needs. Are patients getting to the right level of care once they make it there? And are we really helping beneficiaries actually connect to services versus just providing a referral? So we'll be tracking, and again, the system that we're looking at currently does many of these things, but how many people call and hang up? How many people don't get answered? Very important component to engaging individuals. How many people actually get through the process of doing the completed screening? It should be expected to be about 15 minutes long. Do people say that's enough, I gotta go, or do they actually make it through the entire process? Looking at referrals to treatment by level of care, how effective are the outcome and follow-up reminders, and once they get to the provider, are they getting to the provider, and secondly, are they completing the assessment and admission components? It's very important for us to understand how individuals are moving through our system of care and really accessing services and not dropping off. So I referenced the Community Assessment Service Centers a little bit earlier, and that's a network of our treatment providers. And as we transition to being a drug Medi-Cal focused program, many of the full assessments that the CASCs have done previously will now be able to be funded under the drug Medi-Cal program or for individuals who are undocumented through the My Health LA program. So we wanted to take a look at it. We know that there are some valuable services, valuable expertise, valuable community connections that we have with this network. So how can we take a look at transitioning this to move our system forward? So we're in the very early stages of developing this piece right now, but we know that service navigation at some of our partner sites, whether that be in the criminal justice system, the jails, in the hospitals, as well as county partners like probation and Department of Public Social Services, things like that. A lot of our patients are shared patients and shared clients. And so how do we begin to further engage those systems in order to help bring individuals into our system of care? So these are the pieces that we're going to be looking at. We have some partnerships already, a lot within the criminal justice system at this point, but look at how we can expand that moving forward to just expand the reach, and also leveraging existing outreach programs that we have going, for example, in the homeless encampments and the C3 teams and things like that that we referenced earlier. So basically, a lot of the services that these service navigators would do is to less about assessing the patient or screening the patient, but really looking at how do we make that connection? How do we get individuals actually to that treatment provider? How do we engage motivational interviewing techniques to help support that individual in making the decisions to get to the treatment provider? So that relationship building and that connection that's going to be necessary to help individuals with more complex needs actually address their substance use disorder issues. And then lastly, the third kind of entryway into our system of care is how many of our patients enter currently is really through the direct access at our treatment provider sites. That will continue as we move forward. An individual can still go to any provider, get the screening and assessment services, and enroll. But we will be encouraging other county departments, courts, health plans, and things like that to refer those clients, as shared clients, through the beneficiary access line to determine the provisional level of care. This will help us track a little bit more about where our patients are going. So to talk a little bit more about the case management and care coordination pieces, which are really a lot of the exciting components of where we're moving. In our current substance use disorder system of care outside of drug Medi-Cal, we do offer a limited case management benefit. But what we're talking about here is really how do we expand that much more significantly to make the connections with mental health, physical health, and social services to really provide integrated care. So this graphic here kind of gives the picture of kind of the gray background of how important ensuring integrated and care coordination is. It really encompasses all of the work at all of the levels of care. So you'll see, intensive outpatient, withdrawal management, OTP programs in residential, all needing to address the importance of integrated care. And then case management being an integral part of each of those levels of care that are kind of resting upon that circle there. Really where that's looking at supporting individuals transitioning in care, supporting integration of care, and services linkage. Recovery support services, I'll talk about, it sits slightly outside of the case management, mainly because it's a different benefit. Case management services, as you'll see here, is for individuals who are currently receiving treatment, so they're enrolled in any of those particular levels of care. Recovery support services, you would not be eligible for case management, but you would receive linkage support through the recovery support services benefit, and I'll share that in a moment. So again, case management is available to all of our Medi-Cal beneficiaries. The goals, as many of you I'm sure know, are to assist patients in accessing needed medical, education, social, vocational, rehab, and other community services. Another component to really stress is how do we coordinate care with the physical and mental health services. You know, a lot of our patients, of course, have co-occurring physical and mental health conditions that need to be more fully addressed, and we'll talk about some integration components here. Right now, as well, a lot of our patients will enter at a certain level of care and discharge at that level of care. So if you're, residential, you may not transition down to outpatient, you may not transition down to recovery support, what we currently call aftercare. And so this is really helping patients step down or step up their levels of care if needed, so that we can make sure that we more fully address the service needs of our patients. And then, of course, communicating with referral partners and referral agencies to help patients in managing other social service needs that they have. So we're looking at this from really a phased approach. We are launching the benefit. Our target date is July of 2017. And case management will look relatively similar to how that's being handled in our substance use disorder system currently. And we expand as we move forward, kind of look at other ways of doing case management and care coordination moving forward. So I think one of the big components is that the case manager, at least in the first year of the waiver, is going to be assigned to the current treatment provider. So the outpatient provider, the residential provider, all of those will have different case managers. So the challenge with this, of course, is that when a patient, say, steps down from residential services to intensive outpatient services, that case manager would change. So, it's building a new relationship with a new program, building a new relationship with the case manager. This is really kind of helping, this is kind of a function of how our system works now, so that's how we're going to be transitioning it. And then, as I mentioned, communicating with caseworkers and things. We did talk about in our implementation plan, starting to take a look at how you stratify risk for those of you who are present in the Medi-Cal presentation. LA Care spoke about their case management approach, which is very similar to this, and looking at patients by how complex their healthcare needs are. So you would have a different level of intensity, different type of case management and care coordination service depending on the complexity of your case. So we'll be taking a look at how feasible is that within our system of care moving forward, but nothing that we really expect to be fully implemented when we launch the waiver in July. So to further the goal of integration and care coordination, our department is working with both of the health plans, LA Care and HealthNet, to draft an MOU that outlines some of the expectations around care coordination and care management for our patient population. And this should help, particularly with the most complex of patients, to be able to make sure that they're being served, that communication between all of the partners that are serving the patient are well coordinated and effective. So, kind of to break it down, the health plan's responsibilities for this were to take a look at their entire member population, regardless of whether or not they need SUD or mental health services, and do a health risk assessment for their population. And this will help them initially identify if an individual may need services. You may have, in your own lives, have gone to your healthcare provider recently. They're asking you about the frequency of your alcohol use, whether you drink, 4 to 5 drinks a week, and things like that. So those